Okay, it looks like we're at the top of the hour. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is Q Mangus. I'm a product marketing manager here at Microfocus, and we're joined by Stephen Cohen, a systems engineer as well. Today we're going to be talking about archiving with enterprise messaging. We're excited to bring you this topic and glad that all of you could be here. A few things to take note of before we get into the presentation and the demo is this webinar is being recorded. So you can review it. You'll be getting an email with the recording information shortly. Also, if you do have any questions, feel free to put those through in the questions panel there in the GoToWebinar UI there panel there, and we'll be sure to answer those as we go along, and we'll also have some time at the end for some question and answer. So we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks again, everybody, for being here. What I wanted to do is I wanted to start off just by reviewing enterprise messaging, what it is, how it can benefit you, some of the features of it. And then I'm going to go into and talk about the need for archiving and how the archiving piece works within enterprise messaging. And then Stephen will give us a demo of that. So just to begin with, of course, the biggest piece of enterprise messaging is the collaboration piece. It comes with email, instant messaging, scheduling, contact management, task management, and it can all be synchronized with your mobile device. And this, of course, is built, for those of you who are familiar with it, built using GroupWise. It's powered by GroupWise. Also, with enterprise messaging and exclusive to it is the chat-based Teamwork. This product called Teamworks actually allows you to communicate in real time. It's a social threaded based type of communication where you can have rooms where you can chat, share files, track changes on projects, and that's all done in one interface. And we do have another webinar if you're wanting to learn more about what we're talking about today with the enterprise messaging piece that you can view. Just go to youtube.com/guavatv, and it has information there, and it has our webinar about enterprise messaging, the full webinar. And there's also another webinar that kind of talks about comparing enterprise messaging with other messaging systems out on the marketplace as well. Another piece to enterprise messaging is the security. There's antivirus and anti-spam, cybercrime protection, DDoS protection, and it's built into enterprise messaging so that it actually protects the message transfer agent, the post office agent, web access, and mobility. That's one of the features that we feel is very strong with enterprise messaging is that security. We provide that security for your messaging system that's unparalleled in the marketplace. Also, enterprise messaging can be deployed on premises or in the cloud, and especially for those using the on-premises version, disaster recovery is very important. And so what happens is that if your messaging system, the email portion, ever goes down because of a disaster or hardware failure or whatever it may be, enterprise messaging comes with a disaster recovery solution that allows you to have immediate backup and failover. So if your system were ever to go down, this system will serve as your messaging system as you're getting the live system back up. That makes sure that your enterprise messaging system is always up. We know how critical email can be to an organization, so we have provided a solution so that you can make sure that your system is always up and running. Some other things that are included, of course, are monitoring of the system, reporting, and mailbox management. These tools allow you to make sure that your system is always up and running, that you can get valuable insights into what's going on in your messaging system, and you can learn more about how to make it run better and manage that from one central location. And then finally, another piece of the enterprise messaging system is the archiving solution. And I'll spend, obviously, the majority of today's time on that. What's included in enterprise messaging is the ability to archive your email. So the email that is included in enterprise messaging is archived using the archiving solution, and that archive has built-in search and e-discovery tools, and it can be expanded to include social media and mobile archiving. So that's what we're going to mainly talk about today. As I stated, I just wanted to review what enterprise messaging is, and of course, if you have if you'd like more information about that, feel free to visit microfocus.com, or like I stated before, visit that YouTube page, which is youtube.com/guavatv, and you'll see there we have a couple of recent webinars that discuss exactly what enterprise messaging offers. So let's start talking about archiving. So as I stated, included in enterprise messaging is the archiving piece for email. And that's essential to your organization. You need to make sure that you're archiving email. But in addition to email, archiving has evolved, and the enterprise messaging archiving has the ability to be expanded to include other types of archiving. And so really the idea here is included with enterprise messaging is that ability, of course, to have oversight and archiving on the email messages, but you really should be archiving more. You should be archiving your social media and mobile communication data as well. And the archiving piece can be expanded to do that. That's just what archiving has evolved to become. It's now something where you need to be archiving anything that's business communication. You need to be able to have oversight on that information, and you need to be able to quickly and easily get to that information. And that's what information archiving is now. Also, just to review and to make you be aware, archiving meets a lot of industry-specific concerns. For example, in financial services, you need to be careful of any kind of data leakage of trade secrets or stock information. You need to make sure that you have oversight on all of electronic communication. You need to be able to have that readily available for auditors or other supervisory review. Healthcare, you need to make sure that PHI is protected and that communications can't have medical records and payment histories, or if they do, that it's encrypted and secure. Government agencies, of course, we know with FOIA and other state sunshine laws that you need to be able to quickly produce information that should be part of the public record. And that's where archiving can help with everything that we're talking about here. And of course, every other industry needs to be able to preserve email and other communication data for litigation or in case of accusation. Those are some of the specific concerns when it comes to your different industry. But there's even more to archiving that's important. Archiving helps your systems run better, right? If you get that information off of your live email system, and in this case we're talking about enterprise messaging, if you get it off of that system and into your archive, your system's going to run better. And then your archive actually, it utilizes single instance storage. It compresses the data when it comes across so that your storage footprint is actually smaller when you're using an archive. And so it actually helps with that as well, making sure that you manage your data and that you can have your data in a place that's easily accessible, but does not bog down your live system. And so those are some of the industry-specific concerns. Here's some of the regulations as I talked about, just kind of touching on why you should be archiving. Of course, regulated industries need to be more concerned about this, but any organization needs to know that they could be involved in litigation, and so they need to be able to archive that. And of course, as I stated, you should be doing it just to manage your data. Some quotes here, and I won't go too deep into this, but a couple years ago, Gartner stated this, that most global companies will be involved in legal or regulatory action. So yeah, there's a good chance that if you haven't been involved in litigation or some sort of regulatory action, you will be. The other thing that's interesting, and like I stated, the other use case for archiving is that ability to manage your data. Gartner has recently stated that data volume will grow at about 40 to 60% each year. So just be aware that your data is growing. New forms of communication are out there, and you need to be able to manage that. And then what's interesting as well is this idea that most organizations understand the need for archiving their email. And of course, with enterprise messaging, that is included. But a lot of organizations may understand the need for other types of communication, but they're not currently archiving it. And that's where having a solution where you can obviously archive email but have additional forms of communication that can be archived is essential to your overall communication plan. Of course, mobile archiving is important. As I talked about, basically, if it's a business communication, you need to be able to archive that. Um, some information there. I'll go into more detail on that. And then social media archiving, of course, is important as well. There's kind of two sides to that, right? You need to be able to do it for regulation compliance. You also need to be able to archive your social media just to have that oversight, to be able to know what's going on with your social accounts. And you need to be able to um, see who's posting and what they're posting, and make sure that it conforms with your policies for social media. So that's all that's all part of the overall strategy that you should have when it comes to archiving. Obviously, as I've stated, and I'll say it again, is enterprise messaging is a great solution for your collaboration needs. It includes great functionality that helps you make sure that you're secure, that you have oversight, but you need to be able to make sure that in addition to that, that you have oversight on other types of communication data, and that's where it can be expanded. And what's great about an archiving solution like what's included with enterprise messaging is that it can help you uh, validate your policies. So you need to make sure that you have policies on what is appropriate and is not appropriate when it comes to email communication, when it comes to social media and mobile. You need to make sure that people are trained on that policy, and then of course your technology needs to validate that policy, and that's where the archiving piece comes in. So to dig deep a little bit into the archiving solution that comes with enterprise messaging, obviously it's archiving the email portion of enterprise messaging. But it can be expanded if you are in a situation where your organization wants to deploy enterprise messaging, but maybe you're in a mixed environment where your organization has other types of email systems. The archiving piece can support that. And then, of course, it can be expanded as well to support social media and mobile. And that's why we call it unified archiving. And for those of you on the call that are familiar with it, this is actually the retain solution. So enterprise messaging comes included with the retain unified archiving by Micro Focus. That's the solution that comes when you purchase enterprise messaging. A couple other things to take note of with the archiving piece is that I stated social, I stated email. It also supports mobile communication archiving, text messaging, phone call logs. I'll talk about that in a minute. Also, one thing that's great is that it includes built-in e-discovery. So if you need to be able to search, which is important, right, your archive, the archive includes built-in e-discovery, built-in search tools so that your end users can search their own archive, and then administrators or other named users can search the entire archive. They can place litigation holds on messages or on entire mailboxes. They can export that information to a PDF or other formats in preparation for litigation or regulatory audits. And then we make it easy to access the archive. It can be accessed via a web interface, an email plugin, a mobile app, or the offline viewer. We also call that the publisher. Let me touch on email archiving specifically. Of course, as it's included with enterprise messaging, it is a native integration with the email portion. So it ties directly into the email, and it archives the email messages, the attachments, calendar items, tasks, folders, and it replicates the folder structure over. So your users, when they go into the archive, it's going to look similar to what they're going to see in the client for enterprise messaging. So it looks familiar to them, so they're not lost when they go over there. And then, of course, with those powerful search tools, they can get to their messages easily and find them quickly. I personally use Retain all the time to be able to find messages for my personal archive, because there's great search tools there to be able to get back to your messaging. And then, of course, there's that plugin into the email client where you can get directly to the archive without having to go to the web UI to make it easier for your users to get to that information. Now, additionally, in addition to the built-in capability or the included capability with enterprise messaging of archiving email, you can expand it to archive mobile. So there's a couple of ways in which this works. So we have the ability to place an app directly on the Android device, and it will archive all text messages and phone call logs from that Android device. We can tie directly to the BlackBerry Enterprise Service and pull down all BBM messages, PIN messages, text messages, multimedia messages, and phone call logs directly from BlackBerry, and that's seamless to the user. They don't see that happening. They don't have to do anything there, and it pulls that down. And then for iOS, we have a few options. We have partnered with CellTrust and Telemessage, and both of those companies offer a dual persona, where they can actually place an app on the phone that assigns a separate mobile business number to that phone. And without a need for an additional SIM card or anything, it just assigns that number. Then with that app, they can call, they can text, and all those messages are secure. And then Retain integrates with that, the archiving piece, to be able to pull that down into the archive. And have that oversight on iOS. It also works on Android, but this is a great solution for BYOD. If you have employees that are bringing their own device into your organization and they want to access work data, and they want to use their phone to text and call in a business related manner, this app can allow you to do that, and then with the archiving you have oversight on what's being said. Also, we have the ability to integrate with mobile carriers. We have a few that we're working with right now to be able to pull down text messages directly from the mobile carrier, to be able to archive messages seamlessly there directly from the mobile carrier. And all of that information is placed into that same central archive with the email and social media communication data. Finally, the last piece of the archive that I want to touch on is just that ability to archive social media. You can see all the platforms that are supported. We're adding more often, but the idea is that you can connect to social media accounts. You can pull that information data down. There's two use cases for it. The one is to be able to archive all corporate social media data, be able to view what's going on there, see what's happening on your social media accounts. You can have alerts for keywords, questions, or other personal identifiable info, so you can get that alert, know that something's come up, react to it, act on it. Also, the other use case is if you have employees that are using social media accounts to communicate with customers or communicate in a business manner, you can also archive those communications as well. So that's the social media piece. So what I'd like to do is let's give the time over to Stephen. He's going to show us a demo of how this system can work for you and show us a few features of this powerful solution.
Well, thank you again, Q, and hello, everyone. My name is Stephen Cohen. I'm a senior system engineer at Microfocus, and I'm very pleased to show you a quick demo of Retain. Very happy, although we're going to keep this demo brief and abridged, very happy at any time to set up a full-on one-on-one demo with anyone on the phone here. You just simply send us an email to sales or even Q, and we can set that up for you and go in depth to discover any parts of the system that you may want to talk about. For example, some of that mobile features that Q mentioned before, some of the social features, etc. Because the solution is a very large solution, so just a demo of the entire solution would probably take more than an hour. So this is going to be more of an overview here to show you what end users, how they can make use of Retain, and talk a little bit about the important administration features as well. And finally, any questions that you might have while I go through this, please just type it into the chat window. And at the end of the demo, there will be a Q&A, and we can handle those questions at that time. Okay, so let's talk about Retain. So firstly, Retain is delivered to our customers in two ways. We do have an on-premises solution, which is still very important for many of our enterprise customers these days. And we do have a cloud-hosted solution as well. Our cloud backend is Amazon Web Services, so that for our customers around the world, it is quite likely that we would be able to store the data in their own countries. This is very important, especially for state and local governments around the world. Amazon data centers are available throughout many regions around the globe, so that is very convenient and secure as well. The main interface into Retain, regardless of how it's set up, is going to be the web browser. So this is how administrators will log in to configure the modules and configure the system and access controls, etc. End users can also use the web interface, but end users can also use plugins that we have for various other clients, such as Outlook, Outlook Web Access, GroupWise Web Access, etc. We have apps for mobile as well. So we have an iOS and Android application to provide end users with a native app experience to access their archive data from their mobile devices. All right, so that's a lot of talking. Let's start showing some things here. So I'm going to log in here with an administrator account, and an admin user will have access to, of course, administer the system. So there's a whole bunch of things that we can do here that gets boring really quickly while I talk about it. So I'm going to spare you those details. But there's a few things I'm going to highlight in the admin interface. Number one is users and groups access controls. So access controls into the system are very important. When a user signs into Retain, normally they will sign in using their email address and password. What will happen at that time is that the system will look those credentials up against various directories, Active Directory, Exchange, GroupWise, LDAP, etc. And if the credentials check out, Retain will automatically create a user account for them and assign them with the default group rights. What you're looking at right now is the default group rights. So as you can see, most of these checkboxes remain unchecked. So the default group has very limited access into the system, which is what you would want. So basically, all the default group users can do is view and save emails and messages from their own archive, forward and print messages as well. That's it. They can't do much else. On the flip side, you might want an auditor to have a little bit of extra controls here. So my auditor here can do more, such as exporting, applying confidential tags, viewing the personal audit logs, restoring a message, etc., applying confidential, etc. But even that, we even have two rights that enable users of Retain to delete messages. This is something that is typically reserved for nobody at all. So as you see here, that as well is unchecked for my auditor. It's there in the system because we do have some customers, especially in EMEA and Europe, that have to allow their end users to be able to delete their own data out of their archive. But normally, this won't be enabled. Let's check out what the end user and searching and e-discovery interfaces look like. So there is a number of ways to get at the data inside of Retain. This one here, this is called browse mode. So as Q mentioned, we do replicate the folder structures from the individual users. So as you see here, this is Colin's email account. I can see all his folders there. I can see all the emails in the folders, etc. This is useful for certain users that can't really find anything with using keyword searches. They have to browse through their folders. They have, 101 or even more probably folders. Everyone that they know has their own folder, and they sort their email into these folders religiously. So they are able to find things in browse mode. Personally, myself, and I bet Q as well, prefers this mode here. We call this one easy search mode. There are many other names for it that are floating around. Google-like search mode, fast search mode. I prefer to say this is the best search mode for end users. Auditors probably might want to head over into advanced search, which we will take a look at soon. The advantages to this one here is that it's extremely fast and easy to use. So you don't really need to read any instructions to use this. It's automatic. What you need to do, there's a giant search box here, and this is where your keyword will go. As you type in the keyword, the system starts to search the index and make queries to the index. The indexing system behind the scenes here is really what drives the power of Retain. This is the Apache Solr Index, which we integrate with really well. It is an industry standard and very powerful indexing technology that has been on the market for quite some time. So it allows you to do a lot of cool things here. So for example, number one is you get these search term suggestions. End users kind of expect this because Google's been doing this for quite some time here. based upon the contents of your archive, the contents of your text and search box there. The system will come back with recommendations for you. Behind here, these are called instantaneous search results. They're called instantaneous because they happen really fast, and also because the user doesn't need to do anything for the system to start returning search results. As the user is typing in the keyword, the system is automatically querying the indexing system. So you notice that I never actually did click the search button here. In fact, I'm pretty sure the search button doesn't actually do anything. It's there just to point the users in that direction. The system automatically starts returning the search results. And as a result, they return very fast. A lot of other really neat things about this interface. You see that the keyword is highlighted for the end user's convenience. So we see there, it's in the subject. It's even highlighting the keyword as it shows up inside of folder names. So we're indexing folder names as well. So that's really, really neat. Of course, in the body of the message, the keyword will show up as well, highlighted for you. And also inside of a PDF. So if there's a PDF attachment here and you open that PDF, and if that PDF opens up in the web browser, so for years, web browsers have sort of been the default PDF reader, we will highlight it as well inside of the PDF. So that's really neat too. Properties of these emails have a lot of different pieces of metadata that you can view in the properties. I mentioned personal audit log previously. This is what it is referring to. So every email has its own audit trail, so you can see what's been happening with this particular email. So we see it was archived a few years ago, and some user here actually exported it, and it was viewed a bunch of times. You see the IP address, etc. So as obviously, as I showed you, the default group rights, end users do not have access to view this information. So this information will just simply not be displayed for a typical end user of the system. So continuing to move along, so this interface is, the really neat things about this interface is continue here. Number one here, it shows you how many hits you have. So I've returned 52,124. Very fast. So that pretty much returned in 1 or 2 seconds there as I was typing in that keyword. So that's very fast for 52,000 results. There are, if you look towards the right here, there are 2,085 pages. So that's a lot of pages, obviously. So as you can see here, this interface returns what I call the fire hose. So if no matter where the keyword is showing up inside of the subject, to, from, anywhere in the metadata, body, attachment, whatever, folder name even, it's returning them in this result set. So there's pros and cons to that. We'll talk about that in a second. Just to show you that if I skip right to the end here, the interface is very fast. So there's never reloading of web pages here. We see a bunch of Twitter, YouTube comments, a couple of telemessage items here. So again, so this is displaying a couple of things. This is a unified archive. So you can bring together all these different messages from all these different disparate sources of information, and now you have them under one pane of glass. So that is very important for our customers, that one pane of glass experience. They do not want to have these pieces of data siloed in their individual silos. So an end user needs to go search 5 different locations to complete e-discovery requests. This is all together under one pane here. So really important. The items are sorted by relevance. So where the items show up, where the keyword shows up, will bubble the items up towards the top. However, you can sort any one of these different columns here. Let's skip to some random page. So notice how fast it is to skip from different pages. There's no reloading of any interface here. It just simply happens very fast. Okay. So back to the 52,000 and the 2,000 pages. So obviously, you know what, I'm going to want to filter this down because I'm not going to search through 2,000 pages of results. That's just not a very good use of my time. So all these options that show up on the left side of the screen here, these options allow you to filter into this result set, kind of do a search within a search, and it is extremely slick. So if I select subjects, so if I'm looking for items that contain the keyword in the subject line, you just simply click on subject. Now watch as how quickly it filters out pretty much 50,000 results and displays the remaining 2,000 results that match that criteria there. We're down to 86 pages, and you can keep filtering from there. So if I want to, for example, filter by source, which is typical, I personally, I always, want to search for a lot of sent items. Oh yeah, that email I sent to Q, I need to find that. So you just obviously want to set a filter on sent. So just watch how fast that number of results filters down. So once I click that, boom, we're down to 63. No waiting. And that's the last thing that end users want to do, regardless of who that end user is. They do not want to wait for the system to go back and run a query and then the return result. They want it to happen that fast. All right. So now in my results set, I see a bunch of BBMs, a text message, some emails there. So, again, going back to my unified. So if I just wanted to see emails here, I'll just simply filter an email. Boom. Again, super fast. We're done. Users can read this and they can select any amount. They can place them on legal hold, which would mean that no action can delete that email regardless until that legal hold has been removed. You can place them on confidential, mark them as confidential rather, and that means that nobody can view the email unless they have, or message unless they have access to view confidential items. You can tag items, and we have global tags, which multiple users can share, and that's a great way to split the workflow up. So for example, you can have a global tag called flag, and then one user can go in and flag emails or messages, and then another user can come up, bring up those flagged emails real quick and conduct some different type of work on that, put them on legal hold, export them, take the flag off, etc., etc. There's that old delete button there. Pretty simple to understand what that does. Deletes the items, no questions asked, except if they're, again, on litigation hold, right? You can forward those emails off to any number of users. You can export those emails as a PDF, or you can put them back into Exchange or GroupWise, for example. And again, print there. So that's my quick, easy search mode. Advanced search mode, this is the one that I would feel an auditor probably would want to use. So instead of returning the fire hose, this will allow the auditor to just get right into it and select and really construct a query based upon a wide variety of different criteria here. So we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. This one's been done before. Field contains words, phrase, starts with, ends with. I'm typing what I'm talking about. Boolean and or nothing super fancy, except maybe we can start doing nested queries here. So this is kind of slick here. So you can do 2 key terms, and it's marked confidential, and it's an email, for example. You can just keep going on and on. There's no a limitation to this interface. This is extremely easy to use, maybe out of date range. Very easy to use. Good news is you can construct that query and then save it and load it in the future. So I'll just load up query here that I did some time ago. It's a bunch of keywords over a date range. Again, look at how fast those results appear there. Yeah, and really, I mean, I'll just full disclosure here. I get the question asked all the time. Well, that's great, Stephen. How many emails do you have inside of your little demo system there? Okay, sure, you've caught me. I don't have terabytes of data in here, but the good news is that the Solar indexing system is extensible. There's really no limitation there. If ever you start to hit one of these theoretical limitations, you simply can add another server. So the system can scale into hundreds of terabytes of data, petabytes of data using the Solar technology. The further good news there is that the default installation, which contains the embedded version of Solar, which you don't have to worry about, it just happens behind the scenes. This is easily can easily support tens of thousands of end users conducting simultaneous searching and tens and tens of terabytes of data inside the system. So 99% of customers are completely sorted out with this embedded Solar. So you should be able to get performance like this, regardless of how much data you have. My system only has 8 gigabytes of RAM or 12 gigabytes of RAM. I don't actually recall. You might, if you have more data than me, just might have to up that to 64 gigs and add a couple more CPUs, but otherwise, no need to worry. You will, and I promise you, get performance like this. And of course, you can edit these keywords and date ranges and so on until your heart's content there. And then you can do exporting, legal holds, etc. A couple of other things to show you. So some other interfaces. So I mentioned the Outlook client before. This one's really cool here. So here's my Outlook. We support all current versions of Outlook. So I'm sluggish when it comes to updating Microsoft Office. I'm still on Outlook 2010. Good news is I'm still supported, but we do support 2013, 2016 as well. So what this plugin does is actually a lot. It's a really, really powerful plugin. It gives users options, or options that you can give your end users. So one of the things it does is it actually downloads data from the archive into your Outlook here. So by default, what it's built to do is pretty much download or sync the last year or so worth of archived information. That archive information is available in all the folders underneath this retained download section here, where you can see and search for your emails, open them up, reply to them, forward them, do whatever you want to do with them from Outlook, because they're actually here in Outlook. So even if you're on an airplane at 40,000 feet, you can access this data. So it caches it on your PC. Again, it only does like a year or so, because you don't want to synchronize 10 years or 20 years worth of archived files to Outlook. That's not a good idea. So we offer you some ways to get at that data. We do have built-in search interfaces in Outlook that allows you to do that easy search mode or advanced search mode query to the online archive. So this requires network connection, and this will search the entire archive, and it will actually pull your results down into this handy little search folder here for the end users to be able to access from Outlook. Otherwise, we do have a single sign-on to retain. If they click the retain button, that will launch their browser and do a single sign-on into the interface that I've been showing over here. The last client that I'll show today is the publisher. So Q mentioned this piece. So this piece is really slick. This allows pretty much, this is probably going to be administrators that use this or auditors. So this allows you to export a whole bunch of data in an offline format. So what actually happens behind the scenes here is you select a folder on your PC, and then Publisher will take the query that you want to publish and download the information to your PC into these folders. So you see this is where the message data goes in the attachments folder. There's a database that contains metadata, and there's an index which allows for keyword searching. And then there's also a program called the viewer embedded here. This is automatic. So you can take this folder, and it's encrypted also with a password, and you can put it on a USB key, put it in an envelope, send it by FedEx to anyone, you know, with an address, and they can open up the exported contents with their password that you've sent separately, not in the same package, but separately, and then they can read the data, and they can do a whole bunch of things with the data. There's a search tool, so that search and finder tool allows you to, because there could be thousands of emails exported here, right? So you can search for them. You can do redaction. So you see here, this one here has been redacted. So that means that these pieces of the information have been deleted at it and replaced by a black bar. You can export to PST file from here, which is handy. You can export to PDF file as well. So lots of different options here. Everything I've showed today or talked about today is included with your retained server license. So there's a lot of value here for our end users. Pretty much market leaders here in the unified archiving space. If you've taken a look at the recent analyst reports out of Radicati, out of Gartner, we do very well with the analysts. In Radicati, I think we're #1 in the top right quadrant, which is historically the best quadrant. It's a good thing that these different analysts keep their quadrants to mean the same thing. Otherwise, things would be kind of confusing. So top right in Radicati, that just came out, I think, 2 months ago. We'd be happy to send you that report or links to it to consume. And that pretty much does it for my demo here. Q, are there any questions?
So one came across, this is more about the security piece, but it says, if you're already using a service like Mimecast for security, can you turn off the redundant options in enterprise messaging?
Great. Absolutely. Just a great question. I've been answering a lot of these and fielding a lot of these questions. You know what? My suggestion is you want redundant scanning for email. So email is #1 or #2 in terms of vectors for malware into the enterprise. You would do yourself a very good favor by having more than one system scanning emails that comes inbound into your organization. So you most definitely want redundancy here. I would say absolutely do not turn off the secure messaging gateway features, and let that, you can decide whether you want Mimecast behind or in front, and have that thing scan twice. If you don't want to take my recommendation, sure, you can turn it off, no problem. But I would recommend keeping that on and having double layers, especially for Office 365 customers, because we do sell secure messaging gateway and retain separately. So if you're an Office 365 customer, most definitely you're going to make use of a secondary scanning, and you're going to turn on Office's scanning, but you're going to want more than one there. Good question.
And then, is there a GroupWise plugin that works the same as the Outlook plugin?
Great question. It's a sad answer for now. The answer is no. There is a plugin, but it doesn't offer nearly as much integrations with Outlook. That's just simply because Outlook offers way more APIs than the GroupWise client does. So our GroupWise plugin will allow the user to click a button and do single sign-on into the web browser. So there's a convenience plugin for GroupWise. I would expect, since since Retain is newly purchased by Micro Focus, that they will be focusing on deeper integrations into the GroupWise client. That's certainly something that's going to be on the roadmap coming over the course of the following releases.
All right, the next one is, does Retain honor single message store from GroupWise?
Yes, in fact, Retain does a better job than GroupWise when it comes to deduplication and single instance. So what GroupWise does single instance storage per post office. Okay, so if, let's say, you're an organization with 5 post offices and you send an email to everyone, you're gonna have 5 copies of that email stored. Retain does single instance storage across the entire GroupWise system. So regardless of how many post offices you have, Retain is going to store one piece of data. The way it does this is that it does a hash, it calculates a hash on the email or attachment or anything, and it will then check to see if it already has that. If it does, it's not going to store it twice. It simply just adds pointers in the database.
Great. That looks like all the questions we have. If you have any other questions, feel free to put those through. But that looks like all we have. We'll go ahead and finish up. Thanks again, everyone, for being here and for your interest in this webinar, for your participation. As I stated, this webinar will be recorded, so you'll be getting an email shortly with the link to the webinar recording as well. Thanks again for your time, and if you'd like more information, feel free to reach out to us and visit us at microfocus.com, and you can learn more about enterprise messaging and the archiving piece there. Thanks, everyone.